A homeless veteran saves an abandoned baby. He realizes that no one wants the baby, so he must slowly repair his life and raise the boy. The wind howled through the narrow alleyways of New York City, carrying with it the biting chill of a winter night. The city streets were bustling with evening traffic, a cacophony of car horns and distant chatter that echoed off the towering skyscrapers. Among the bustling crowds and glowing shop windows, Doc navigated the maze of alleyways, keeping to the shadows where he felt most comfortable. Doc was no stranger to these streets. His military-issued boots, worn and scuffed, carried him through the labyrinth of the city that had become his home. A threadbare army jacket was wrapped tightly around him, offering little protection against the piercing cold. As he shuffled along, his eyes darted around, searching for something, anything, that could stave off the hunger gnawing at his insides. The smell of discarded food led him to a dumpster behind a busy diner. Doc hesitated, casting a glance over his shoulder before diving into his search. His hands, roughened by years of hardship, sifted through the refuse with practiced efficiency. Suddenly, a soft sound reached his ears, nearly drowned out by the city's symphony. A baby's cry, weak and desperate. Doc froze, his heart skipping a beat. He pushed aside the trash, revealing a bundle of dirty blankets tucked beside the dumpster. Inside, a tiny face peered up at him, wide eyes glistening with tears. The baby's cries grew louder as the cold air bit at its exposed skin. "What in the world?" Doc muttered, reaching down to scoop up the fragile bundle. His mind raced, a flurry of questions and emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Who leaves a baby here? This ain't right. The baby squirmed in his arms, its cries softening as Doc instinctively held it closer, sharing what little warmth he had. The weight of the child in his arms was both grounding and terrifying, a reminder of responsibility and vulnerability he hadn't felt in years. He glanced around, half expecting someone to appear and claim the child, but the alley remained silent, save for the distant rumble of traffic. The city, in all its vastness, seemed indifferent to the plight of the tiny life cradled in Doc's arms. "I can't just leave you here," Doc murmured, his voice barely audible above the city's din. He had seen too much, lost too much, to turn away now. "Guess it's just you and me, kid." With the baby held securely against his chest, Doc set off toward the shelter where he sometimes found a warm place to sleep. The journey through the city felt different this time, each step heavy with a new sense of purpose. As he walked, he spoke softly to the child, his voice a low, comforting rumble. "I don't know what I'm doing, little one, but we'll figure it out. Ain't got much, but I promise you this. I ain't leaving you behind." The baby, as if sensing the sincerity in Doc's words, nestled closer, its cries fading into quiet whimpers. Doc felt a strange sense of calm wash over him, a flicker of hope kindling in his chest. He hadn't felt this kind of connection since his days in the service, surrounded by comrades who were like family. The shelter loomed ahead, a beacon of warmth and safety in the frigid night. As Doc approached, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. He pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside, the warmth enveloping him like a long-lost friend. Lydia Chen, the shelter's social worker, looked up from her desk as Doc entered. Her eyes widened in surprise at the sight of the baby in his arms. "Doc, what's happened?" she asked, rising to meet him. Doc shifted the baby, his expression a mix of determination and uncertainty. "Found this little one out back, near the diner. Don't know what to do, Lydia, but I couldn't leave him out there." Lydia's gaze softened as she studied Doc, recognizing the rare vulnerability in his eyes. "You did the right thing, Doc. Let's get you both settled, and we'll figure this out together." As Lydia led him to a quiet corner of the shelter, Doc felt a glimmer of hope amid the uncertainty. The city was still vast and indifferent, but in this small corner, he had found a connection, a purpose, and for the first time in a long while, Doc felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The warmth of the shelter wrapped around Doc and the baby like a comforting embrace. The room was a haven amidst the chaos of the city, filled with the low hum of conversation and the soft clinking of cups as people gathered around tables to sip hot soup. It was a temporary refuge for many, but tonight it felt like something more to Doc. Lydia Chen led Doc to a secluded corner where a few chairs had been pushed together to form a makeshift resting area. The baby, now nestled against Doc's chest, had fallen into a fitful sleep, its tiny fingers clutching the edge of his jacket. Doc gently lowered himself into a chair, careful not to disturb the sleeping child. Lydia sat across from him, her eyes filled with concern and curiosity. "Doc, you did a good thing finding this baby, but we need to talk about what happens next." Doc nodded, his gaze fixed on the sleeping infant. "I know, Lydia. I couldn't leave him out there." No one else seemed to notice, like it was just another piece of the city noise. Lydia reached out, touching Doc's arm with a reassuring grip. "You did the right thing bringing the baby here, but you know it's not going to be easy. This little one needs more than just a roof over their head." Doc looked up, meeting her eyes. "I ain't got much, but I'll do what I can. Just don't know where to start." Lydia smiled softly, recognizing the earnestness in his voice. "We'll figure it out together, Doc. But first, we need to make sure the baby is healthy and safe. I'll contact social services in the morning and see what options we have." Doc felt a knot of anxiety twist in his stomach at the mention of social services. "You're not going to take him away, are you?" Lydia shook her head, her expression gentle. "No, not if we can help it, but we need to make sure the baby is okay and get some paperwork started. In the meantime, you can stay here, and we'll find some supplies for you both." Doc nodded, relieved but still wary. The baby stirred in his arms, letting out a small whimper. Doc instinctively rocked the child, murmuring soothing words as he did. "It's okay, little one. We're gonna figure this out." Lydia watched him, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know, Doc, I've seen a lot of people come through these doors, but not many with your kind of heart." Doc shrugged, his eyes still on the baby. "Just doing what feels right. Seen too much of the opposite to walk away." Lydia stood, her mind already working through a plan. "I'll see if we can find some formula and diapers for tonight. You should try to get some rest too." Doc nodded again, his exhaustion finally catching up with him. The baby's warmth against his chest was comforting, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this. As Lydia walked away, he settled back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. The noise of the shelter faded into the background as Doc let himself relax, his mind drifting to memories of his time in the service. The camaraderie, the sense of purpose, things he hadn't felt since returning to civilian life. Holding the baby, he felt a flicker of that purpose returning, a reminder that he could still make a difference, even if only for one small life. He thought about his own past, the struggles that had led him to these streets. Life had been a series of battles, both on and off the field, and he had learned to fight alone. But now, with this child depending on him, he realized he didn't have to do it all by himself. Lydia and the shelter were there, offering support, reminding him that people cared. As Doc drifted into a light sleep, the baby snuggled closer, its breathing even and peaceful. The city outside might still be a cold and indifferent place, but here, in this little corner of the shelter, Doc felt a glimmer of warmth. It was the beginning of something new, a chance to rebuild not just his own life, but the life of the child he had found. He opened his eyes, glancing down at the baby, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "We got this, little one," he whispered, his voice filled with a quiet determination. "We got this." The first light of dawn filtered through the high windows of the shelter, casting a soft glow over the room. Doc stirred awake, momentarily disoriented as he felt the weight of the small body nestled against him. It took a moment for the events of the previous night to come rushing back, and he looked down to see the baby, Malik, still sleeping peacefully in his arms. Doc shifted carefully, trying not to disturb the child as he sat up straighter in his chair. His body ached from the night spent in the uncomfortable position, but a sense of purpose kept him moving. He gently touched the baby's cheek, marveling at the warmth and softness. "Hey there, little one," he murmured, a smile tugging at his lips. "Looks like we made it through the night." The baby stirred, letting out a small yawn before blinking up at Doc with wide, curious eyes. Doc felt a pang of emotion at the sight. It had been a long time since he had felt connected to anyone or anything, but this child had stirred something within him. As the shelter began to wake, Lydia returned with a bundle of supplies. She approached Doc, offering him a warm smile. "Morning, Doc. How are you two holding up?" Doc nodded, shifting Malik into a more comfortable position. "We're okay. Little guy here seems to be doing all right." Lydia handed him a bag filled with baby formula, diapers, and a few essentials. "I brought what I could find. Should be enough to get you through today." Doc took the bag gratefully, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "Thanks, Lydia. Don't know what I'd do without you." She waved a hand dismissively, her expression soft. "You're doing the hard part, Doc, but we're here to help." As Doc began to prepare a bottle for Malik, he found himself fumbling with the unfamiliar task. His hands, steady in times of crisis, now seemed clumsy as he measured out the formula. Lydia watched, stepping in to offer guidance. "Here, let me show you," she said gently, demonstrating how to mix the formula and test the temperature. Doc watched closely, trying to memorize each step. "I appreciate it, Lydia. Been a while since I've had to take care of anyone but myself." Lydia glanced at him, curiosity in her gaze. "You mentioned you served in the military. You ever have kids of your own?" Doc shook his head, focusing on the task at hand. "No, never had the chance. Life took a different turn after I got out." There was a pause, a shared understanding of the struggles he had faced. Lydia didn't press further, respecting the boundaries he had set. Instead, she nodded toward Malik. "Well, looks like you've got a new mission now," she said with a smile. Doc chuckled, a sound that surprised even him. "Yeah, guess I do." Once the bottle was ready, he carefully fed Malik, watching as the baby drank hungrily. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental in the context of his new reality. As the baby settled into a contented slumber, Doc felt a sense of accomplishment, however fleeting. The morning passed in a blur of activity as the shelter buzzed with the energy of its occupants. Doc kept to his corner, focused on caring for Malik and sorting through the supplies Lydia had provided. The routine was unfamiliar, but it gave him a sense of direction, a way to measure time beyond mere survival. As the day wore on, Doc found himself thinking about the future. The streets had been his home for too long, and while he had grown accustomed to the transient nature of his existence, Malik needed something more. He couldn't rely on the shelter forever. He needed a plan. When Lydia returned in the afternoon, Doc took the opportunity to seek her advice. "Lydia, I've been thinking. I want to do right by Malik, but I don't know where to start. Any ideas?" Lydia considered for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "You've got a big heart, Doc, and that's a good start. There are programs for veterans that might be able to help you get on your feet." Doc nodded, hopeful, yet uncertain. "I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't want to let him down." Lydia offered a reassuring smile. "You're already doing more than most would. I'll look into some options for you, see what we can find." With the promise of help, Doc felt a renewed sense of determination. The road ahead was daunting, but he was no stranger to difficult journeys. Malik's presence had reignited a fire within him, a desire to fight for a future he had long thought impossible. As the sun began to set, casting the room in a warm golden light, Doc held Malik close, whispering softly, "We're gonna be okay, little man. We'll figure this out, one step at a time." In that moment, surrounded by the noise and bustle of the shelter, Doc realized he had found something he hadn't expected, a sense of belonging, not just to a place, but to a purpose. Malik had given him that gift, and for that, he was grateful. He looked down at the baby, who was now drifting into a peaceful sleep, and felt a sense of peace settle over him. It wasn't going to be easy, but he knew, deep down, that they had each other, and sometimes that was all that mattered. The next morning brought a renewed sense of purpose as Doc set out from the shelter. Malik bundled snugly in a second-hand carrier strapped to his chest. The early morning air was crisp, the sky a clear blue above the towering skyscrapers. Doc made his way through the city with determination, each step resonating with a newfound sense of responsibility. His destination was the community center, a few blocks from the shelter, where he hoped to find Jamal Turner. Jamal was a young volunteer Doc had met a few months back. Known for his warmth and energy, Jamal had a reputation for helping those who'd fallen through the cracks of the city's support systems. As Doc entered the bustling community center, he was greeted by the sound of laughter and conversation. The room was alive with activity. Families gathered around tables for breakfast, and volunteers moving between them with plates of food and cups of coffee. Doc spotted Jamal across the room, assisting a group of kids with an art project. Jamal's easy smile and genuine enthusiasm drew people to him, and Doc found himself grateful for the younger man's friendship. "Jamal!" Doc called out, weaving through the crowd to reach him. Jamal looked up, his face lighting up with recognition. "Doc? Good to see you, man. And who's this little guy?" he asked, nodding toward Malik. "This is Malik," Doc replied, shifting the baby in his carrier. "Found him a couple of nights ago. Been trying to figure things out since." Jamal's expression softened as he reached out to gently touch Malik's tiny hand. "Hey there, Malik. You're a lucky kid to have Doc looking after you." Doc felt a swell of gratitude at Jamal's words. "I'm the lucky one, I think. But I could use some advice, Jamal. I want to make sure I'm doing right by him." Jamal gestured for Doc to follow him to a quieter corner of the center, away from the bustle. They sat down, and Jamal turned his full attention to Doc. "Doc, you're doing a good thing here, but I know it's not easy," Jamal began, his tone earnest. "There are programs and resources for vets like you. Housing assistance, childcare services, stuff that can make a real difference." Doc nodded, listening intently. "Lydia at the shelter mentioned something similar. I just don't know where to start." Jamal leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. "First step is getting you into one of those programs. I've got some contacts who might be able to help with fast-tracking things. And I'll make sure you get some legal advice, too, to sort out any paperwork." Doc's relief was palpable. "That'd be a huge help, Jamal. I can't thank you enough." Jamal smiled, a reassuring warmth in his gaze. "We're all in this together, Doc. And Malik deserves the best shot at life we can give him." Doc glanced down at Malik, who was awake and observing the world with wide, curious eyes. The sight of the baby's innocence filled him with a determination to succeed. "I won't let him down, Jamal. I've been fighting for myself for so long, but this feels different. Feels right." Jamal nodded, understanding the weight of Doc's words. "And you're not alone. Remember that. We've got your back." They spent the next hour going over potential resources and making plans to connect with Jamal's contacts. Each step felt like a lifeline, a path forward in what had seemed like an impossible situation. As they wrapped up, Jamal handed Doc a list of organizations and contact information. "Give these folks a call. I'll follow up with them too, see if we can't get things moving." Doc took the list, a sense of hope settling over him. "Thanks, Jamal. You've done more for me than you know." Jamal grinned, clapping Doc on the shoulder. "Just keep doing what you're doing, Doc. You've got a good heart, and that's what matters." As Doc left the community center, Malik nestled against him. He felt the weight of uncertainty lift slightly. The city around him was as chaotic as ever, but for the first time, he felt like he was moving in the right direction. The challenges ahead were daunting, but Doc knew he had the support of people who cared, people like Lydia and Jamal, who saw him not just as a homeless veteran, but as a father trying to build a better future for Malik. Walking back to the shelter, Doc felt a renewed sense of determination. He had faced countless battles in his life, both on the field and off. But this was a fight worth taking on. Malik's presence had given him a reason to hope, to strive for something more. As they neared the shelter, Doc paused, looking down at Malik with a soft smile. "We're gonna be okay, little man. We've got friends, and we've got each other. That's all we need." Malik cooed in response, a small sound that made Doc's heart swell with emotion. It was a new beginning, a journey they would take together. And for the first time in a long while, Doc felt truly alive. As the days turned into weeks, Doc settled into a routine, one that revolved around Malik and the newfound hope that had entered his life. With the help of Jamal and Lydia, Doc began to navigate the complex web of social services and veteran programs that could provide a stable foundation for their future. Doc spent his mornings at the community center, where he met with a counselor who specialized in assisting veterans. Her name was Ellen, a sharp-eyed woman with a no-nonsense attitude, but a heart full of compassion. Ellen had a way of cutting through the bureaucratic red tape, her experience and connections proving invaluable. "We'll start with housing," Ellen said during one of their meetings, tapping a pen against her clipboard. "There's a transitional program that could get you and Malik into a small apartment. It's not much, but it's a start." Doc nodded, the prospect of having a place of their own filling him with both excitement and apprehension. "I just want a safe space for him, Ellen. Somewhere he can grow up without worry." Ellen smiled, her eyes softening. "I know, Doc. You're doing great. We'll make sure Malik has everything he needs." While the paperwork and meetings were sometimes overwhelming, Doc found solace in the small moments with Malik. The baby's laughter and curious gaze were a constant reminder of the importance of his efforts. Each day brought new challenges, but also new joys as Doc learned to care for Malik and, in turn, care for himself. One afternoon, as Doc and Malik were walking through the park near the shelter, Doc marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. The leaves were beginning to turn, painting the landscape in vibrant shades of red and gold. Malik watched the falling leaves with wide eyes, his small fingers reaching out to grasp them. Doc sat on a bench, holding Malik on his lap. "It's beautiful, isn't it, little man?" he said, smiling as Malik babbled in response. "We've come a long way." Lost in thought, Doc almost didn't notice when an older man approached the bench and sat down beside him. The man was rugged and weathered, much like Doc, and there was a familiarity in his eyes. "Mind some company?" the man asked, nodding toward Malik. Doc shook his head. "Not at all. Just enjoying the day." The man leaned back, letting out a sigh. "I used to come here with my kids years ago. Now it's just me and my old dog." Doc glanced at the man, sensing a kindred spirit. "You're a veteran, aren't you?" The man nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Marine Corps. Saw some action back in the day." "You?" "Army," Doc replied, shifting Malik slightly. "Seems like we all end up crossing paths eventually." The man chuckled, a sound filled with camaraderie. "Name's Frank. Been around these parts for a while now. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Doc appreciated the offer, knowing the value of having a network of support. "Thanks, Frank. I'm Doc, and this here's Malik. Found him a few weeks ago, and we've been figuring things out ever since." Frank nodded, his gaze softening as he looked at Malik. "You're doing right by him, Doc, and I'm glad to see you're not alone in this." They talked for a while, sharing stories of their service and life's challenges. Frank's presence was comforting, a reminder that there were others who understood the unique struggles faced by veterans. As the afternoon wore on, Doc felt a sense of belonging, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. When it was time to leave, Frank offered a firm handshake and a promise to stay in touch. "Take care of yourself, Doc. And remember, you've got people looking out for you." As Doc made his way back to the shelter, Malik snuggled against his chest. He reflected on the connections he had made since Malik had entered his life. The path forward was still uncertain, but he was no longer facing it alone. With friends like Lydia, Jamal, and now Frank, Doc felt equipped to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. Back at the shelter, Doc met with Lydia to discuss the progress on securing housing. The prospect of having a home for Malik was becoming more real with each passing day, and Doc felt a mix of anticipation and gratitude. "We're getting closer, Doc," Lydia said, reviewing some documents. "I think we'll have good news for you soon." Doc smiled, hope shining in his eyes. "I can't thank you enough, Lydia. You've all done so much for us." Lydia waved a hand, her expression warm. "It's what we're here for, and you're the one making it all possible." As Doc prepared Malik for bed that night, he felt a profound sense of purpose and fulfillment. The journey had been challenging, but it was also the most rewarding experience of his life. Malik had brought new meaning to his days, a reason to keep moving forward. Settling into the worn but familiar cot, Doc held Malik close, whispering softly as the baby drifted to sleep. "We're gonna have a home soon, little man, a place just for us, and I promise, I'll do everything I can to give you the life you deserve." As the shelter quieted around them, Doc felt a deep peace settle over him. He had found hope in the most unexpected of places, and he knew that whatever the future held, he and Malik would face it together, surrounded by friends and a community that cared. The days continued to blend into a rhythm of hope and perseverance. Doc's determination to create a stable future for Malik remained unwavering, even as the challenges of securing housing and navigating the bureaucratic maze seemed endless. Each step forward, however small, was a victory. It was a crisp autumn morning when Doc received the news he had been waiting for. Ellen from the community center called to inform him that a small, affordable apartment had become available. It was not a grand space, but it was theirs, a place where Malik could grow up with a semblance of stability. Doc's heart raced with a mix of excitement and nerves as he prepared to move. Lydia and Jamal were there to help, offering their support and practical assistance. Lydia had secured a small grant for moving expenses, and Jamal had rounded up some donated furniture and supplies. "Today's the big day," Jamal said, carrying a box labeled baby stuff into the shelter's lobby. "We've got a few hours to get everything moved, and then you'll have a place to call home." Doc glanced around the shelter, a wave of gratitude washing over him. The shelter had been a temporary refuge, a starting point for the new life he was building. "I couldn't have done it without you guys," he said sincerely. Lydia, who was busy organizing a few last-minute supplies, looked up and smiled. "You've done the hard work, Doc. We're just here to help you get over the finish line." With the combined effort of Lydia, Jamal, and a few other volunteers, the move was surprisingly smooth. They managed to transport the belongings and set up the basic essentials in the new apartment by early afternoon. The apartment was small, with 2 modest rooms and a cozy living area. The walls were plain, and the furniture was simple, but to Doc, it felt like a palace. The space was clean and functional, and the sense of accomplishment was palpable. As they finished setting up the last few items, Doc took a moment to survey the space. Malik was asleep in his new crib, the soft hum of the apartment providing a soothing backdrop. "This is it, Malik," Doc said softly, standing in the middle of the living room. "Our new home. It's not much, but it's ours." Jamal and Lydia looked on with approval, their smiles reflecting the satisfaction of a job well done. "You've done great, Doc," Jamal said, clapping him on the back. "Now, let's get you settled in and make this place feel like home." With their help, Doc began unpacking and organizing the apartment. The process was slow but fulfilling, each item finding its place and making the space feel more personal. By evening, the apartment began to take shape, a true reflection of the new chapter in Doc and Malik's lives. As dusk settled over the city, Doc sat on the worn-out couch with Malik in his arms, feeling a profound sense of contentment. The city lights twinkled through the window, casting a gentle glow over the room. Lydia and Jamal stayed for dinner, sharing a modest meal with Doc to celebrate the move. The atmosphere was warm and supportive, a testament to the bonds formed during their journey. "This place already feels like home," Lydia said, raising her glass in a toast. "Here's to new beginnings and brighter futures." Doc nodded, his heart swelling with emotion. "Thanks for everything, Lydia." "Jamal, I couldn't have done this without you." As the evening wore on and Lydia and Jamal prepared to leave, Doc felt a mix of relief and gratitude. The apartment, though simple, was a significant milestone, a testament to the hard work and support that had made it possible. "Don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything," Lydia said, as she hugged Doc goodbye. "We're always here for you." Jamal nodded in agreement, his eyes filled with encouragement. "Yeah, and if you ever need a hand, just give me a call. We're family now." As Doc closed the door behind them, he took a deep breath, letting the silence of the apartment envelop him. The space was small, but it was filled with the promise of new beginnings. He looked around at the familiar items, each one a reminder of the journey they had undertaken. Holding Malik close, Doc felt a sense of peace. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but for the first time, he felt confident that they could face them together. The apartment was more than just four walls and a roof. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the possibility of a better future. As he settled Malik into his crib and watched him drift off to sleep, Doc felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had fought hard for this moment, and while the journey was far from over, he knew that Malik would grow up surrounded by love and stability. Sitting in the quiet of the new apartment, Doc allowed himself a moment of reflection. The city outside continued its relentless pace, but inside this small sanctuary, he felt a sense of belonging and purpose. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it felt full of promise. Doc whispered softly to Malik, "We're going to be all right, little one. We've got a home now, and that's a start. We'll make it work, one day at a time." As he sat there, the soft hum of the city blending with the peaceful silence of his new home, Doc knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he and Malik would face them together, with hope and determination guiding their way. The first few weeks in the new apartment had been a whirlwind of adjusting and settling in. Doc found himself navigating the intricacies of daily life with Malik while juggling appointments and responsibilities. The apartment, though modest, had become a haven, a space where he could build a future for his son. One chilly morning, Doc woke early, the city still wrapped in a soft blanket of fog. Malik was still asleep, his small body tucked cozily in his crib. Doc used this quiet time to prepare for the day ahead, mentally reviewing his to-do list. Today was an important day. He had an appointment with a job placement agency that could help him find work, a crucial step in securing their long-term stability. After a quick breakfast, Doc bundled Malik in a warm, soft blanket and settled him into the stroller. The streets were busy, the city coming to life with the morning rush, but Doc felt a sense of determination as he navigated through the crowds. The job placement agency was located in a modern office building, its sleek glass exterior contrasting sharply with the more worn-down areas of the city. Doc checked in at the front desk and was soon ushered into a small conference room where he met with a woman named Karen. Karen was professional but warm, her demeanor immediately putting Doc at ease. "Good morning, Doc. I'm Karen. Let's get started with reviewing your resume and discussing your employment goals." Doc nodded, taking a seat across from her. "Thanks for seeing me, Karen. I'm looking to find something stable, something I can build on for Malik's sake." Karen nodded, flipping through the pages of Doc's resume. "I see you have a background in logistics and management. That's a solid foundation. Let's talk about what kind of positions you're interested in and what skills you want to highlight." As they discussed Doc's qualifications and preferences, Karen's expertise and genuine interest helped to clarify his options. They went over potential job leads, and Karen promised to follow up with some contacts and set up interviews. The meeting ended on a hopeful note, with Doc feeling more optimistic about his job prospects. As Doc left the agency, the afternoon sun was bright and warm. He decided to take Malik to the park, a short walk from their apartment, to enjoy some fresh air. The park was a popular spot for families, and as he pushed the stroller along the path, he noticed other parents and children playing, laughing, and enjoying the day. Doc found a shaded bench and sat down, Malik contentedly observing the world around him. The park was a peaceful retreat from the hustle and bustle of the city, and Doc took a moment to reflect on his journey. "Look at all these people, Malik," Doc said softly, his gaze sweeping over the lively scene. "They've got their lives together, and we will too. It's just a matter of time." As he spoke, he noticed a familiar face approaching. Frank, the older veteran he had met in the park weeks ago. Frank was walking his dog, a large, friendly golden retriever that seemed to have boundless energy. "Hey, Doc," Frank called out, a broad smile on his face. "Didn't expect to see you here. How's the new place?" Doc stood to greet him, Malik's stroller parked beside him. "Hey Frank, it's been good. We're still settling in, but it feels like home." Frank nodded, his gaze falling on Malik. "Looks like you're doing a great job. That little guy's lucky to have you." Doc smiled, his pride evident. "I'm the lucky one. It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it." Frank sat down on the bench beside Doc, his dog happily sniffing around. "You know, I was thinking, there's a local veterans group that meets up once a week. They might be able to offer some more support and resources." Doc's interest was piqued. "That sounds like something that could be really helpful. I'd like to check it out." Frank took out a small notebook and scribbled down the details. "Here's the info. They're a good bunch. Lots of guys and gals who understand what you're going through. They've helped me out a lot." Doc accepted the note with gratitude. "Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it." They chatted for a while longer, discussing various topics, from the challenges of civilian life to the best places to find good deals on baby supplies. The conversation was comforting, a reminder of the support network that was slowly growing around him. As the sun began to set, Doc packed up and headed back to the apartment, Malik sleeping soundly in his stroller. The day had been productive and reassuring, a step forward in their journey. Once home, Doc set about preparing dinner, his thoughts focused on the next steps. The job search was still in progress, but the support from Karen, Lydia, Jamal, and now Frank provided a sense of momentum. As he sat down to eat, Malik was settled in his high chair, enjoying a small portion of mashed sweet potatoes. Doc watched his son with a sense of fulfillment, the challenges of the day melting away in the glow of their simple evening. "I know it's not always easy, Malik," Doc said, his voice gentle, "but we're moving in the right direction. We've got each other, and that's what matters." After dinner, Doc began to prepare Malik for bed. The routine was soothing, a calming ritual that helped both father and son unwind. As he tucked Malik in and watched the baby drift off to sleep, Doc felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Sitting quietly in the dim light of the nursery, Doc allowed himself to savor the moment. The future was still uncertain, and there were many obstacles to overcome, but he had made significant progress. The apartment was a symbol of their new beginning, a foundation upon which they could build a better life. With a soft smile, Doc whispered to Malik, "We've come a long way, and we've got a long way to go, but we're doing this together, and that makes all the difference." As he left the room, the peaceful silence of the apartment enveloping him, Doc felt a deep sense of peace and resolve. The road ahead would have its challenges, but with hope, support, and the unwavering bond between father and son, he knew they were ready to face whatever came.